Another hearty hello from West Virginia. Maybe it's a football field in West Virginia. We might have this. Okay, but what we do have is joke of the day, and I know you're ready, so let's get to it. And another timely joke. So how do football players stay cool? I mean, all that equipment and the uniform and everything, how do they stay cool? By standing close to the fans. Because they have fans in the stadium. Okay, well, again, timely joke because we are going to be looking at subtracting sign numbers. And once again, one of my favorite ways to teach sign numbers is dealing with football. So I have yet again my handy dandy football helmet, my math helmet with my positive and my negative on it. So let's get this thing on so that we can start taking a look at being able to subtract sign numbers. Okay, so once again, the description of football is simply this in a nutshell. And I'm not going to, there's lots of details to it, but we'll leave all the details to the actual football fans and football players. We just want something that's going to help us to understand how to subtract sign numbers. So if I am on the offense, then what that means is I have the ball and I am trying to make my way to my goal line. So let's say here's our football field, and if you don't understand the football analogy that I'm giving you, just picture it to be a number line. It'll work perfectly fine. So here is my goal line. I'm heading in this direction, trying to make it to that goal because I'm on the offense. My defense facing me, their goal is not only to prevent me from getting to the goal line, but to keep me from moving at all is their goal. So let's say that I have a starting point, which in football the starting point is called your line of scrimmage. So let's set up my line of scrimmage to be, hold on a second here, right about here. This will be my line of scrimmage. So that is my 0 line. Now, again, if you don't understand the football analogy, just picture this to be a number line, and this will be the 0 on the number line. So what happens is I've got the ball, I'm on the offense, I'm heading in this direction, trying to make it to my goal. And let's take a look at this first example. It says on the first play, my offense does pretty well. And we get a gain of 5 yards. Gain because it's positive. So we make a gain of 5 yards. And that means that we are heading in this direction. And we're going to go about like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is my gain of 5 yards. Now, here's what happens. With subtraction, what happens is the defense does such a good job when you see a subtraction. Now remember, we looked at addition before. And addition said on the next play, we're just going to add to it what happens on that play. But what happens with subtraction is the defense does such a good job that they knock me. Not only do they prevent me from moving, they knock me so silly that I am now facing in the other direction. That's what happens whenever you see subtraction. So, on my first play, I headed 5 yards in this direction. Now I'm sitting right here. I am so close to my goal. I'm so excited. My fans are cheering. My team's cheering. We have got this. But on that second play, notice subtract 12. That means on that second play, the defense yet again was so good. They knocked me so silly that they spun me around like this. I am now facing in this direction. I don't even know where I am anymore. And I marched down the field this way 12 yards, heading in this direction. So that means that when I march this way 12 yards, I come back like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have now landed right here. So, in terms of putting the two plays together, and being that I started right here, would you say that within the constraints of these two plays, would you say that I had a net gain or a net loss? Since I started right here and I have finally ended up here, would that be a net gain or a net loss? Yes, that is a net loss. So what happened on this one is I ended up with a negative because negative signifies a loss. Now what is my net loss? Well, I started here, I ended up here. We went back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I had a net loss of 7 yards. Now, before we come up with some rules, let's take a look at the next two examples, and then we'll put it all together to come up with our rules. So let's get this out of here and take a look at that second example. All right. So this one here again is my line of scrimmage. Here's where I'm starting. And on this one it says on that first play, and remember I'm heading in this direction because there's my goal. I want to go this way. But on that first play, the defense did a good job and they kicked me back 2 yards. So I start here, but I take a hit backwards 2 yards. So I'm going to end up going 1, 2 like this. There's my loss of 2. Now, I'm still facing in this direction. I'm still trying to get to that goal. But notice again on the second play, I'm subtracting. So once again, the defense, man, they are good. So on this second play, I'm starting here now, but they hit me so hard, they knock me so silly, they spin me around again like this, and now I start marching down the field in this direction, and I march down the field 7 yards. So therefore, I'm going to pick up and I'm going to go again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then another 6 and another 7, which I didn't make enough room there, but I think you're getting the point here. So the point is this. If I started here and I ended up all the way back here, would you say that this is a net gain or a net loss if I started here and ended up here, trying to head in that direction? Yes, net loss. So to show net loss, I'm going to show a negative. What is that net loss? Well, we went back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 yards. So a net loss of 9 yards. Now, let's take a look at this one last example here. And I do have more examples to go through, but I want us to look at these 3 examples in order to come up with the rules. So let's move that line of scrimmage here a little bit, and let's put the line of scrimmage now. Let me get my yard line in there. There we go. Okay, let's start our line of scrimmage to be right about here. Okay, this is our beginning spot. So we are on offense. We're starting right here. We're heading in this direction, so close to that goal line. We are excited. We are pumped. We're going to do this. But once again, a great defense. Man, they are good. And on that first play, we take a hit of 9 yards. They kick us back 9 yards. So that means we're going to get kicked back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There is my loss of 9 yards. But now, crazy things happen on the second play. Notice that I am now here, still facing this way, still trying to head to that goal. But on that second play, check out what happens. Subtract, again, means they knock me so silly, they spin me around, and I'm now heading in this direction. But notice what happens here. -4. Remember, back in the video where we talked about adding sign numbers, we said that that negative indicated we walked backwards like this. See, when this one, we took that hit of 2, they spun us around, we were facing this direction, but we marched 7. Because this minus right here simply turned us around, but we subtracted a +7. So positive indicates that I'm going to move in the direction that I'm facing. And that's what happened here. We first started off with gaining 5 yards. We marched in the direction we were facing. They spun us around, but then we subtracted after the spinning a +12. So we will continue to walk in the direction we're facing. However, on this one, they spun us around. We start here, they spin us around, but they knock us even so silly that we're not marching in the direction we're facing, we're marching backwards 4. So we go back 4 yards like this. So what happens now is we were here and we come back 1, 2, 3, 4, which quite frankly, is that really a loss of 4? No, it is a gain of 4. Oh, that's really going to be helpful here in a minute. So let's take a look at the net idea. Start here, we end here, but within the 2 plays, would you say that if we start here and end here, is that a net gain or a net loss? Yes, this is a net loss still, so we're going to show that with a minus. It's a net loss of how much? Well, we went back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So a net loss of 5. Now, as I said in the previous video, and I still mean it, I do not want to have to draw a football field every time I subtract signed numbers. I don't even want to have to draw a number line, and quite frankly, I'm enjoying the football helmet, but it kind of hurts my head a little bit. This thing's pretty heavy. I don't know if you notice, I keep going like this. It's pushing down really hard on my forehead. I don't want to have to do this every time I'm subtracting signed numbers. I'd rather just have a couple of rules so that I can follow the rules and do it in my head. Well, let's look at what these rules would be. Let's take a look at this one first. Notice that I said this, quite frankly, was a gain of 4, which would be plus 4. So I start off with this hit of 9, the negative 9, and suddenly this subtract negative 4 turns into plus 4. Oh, so what happens here is we do what we call adding the opposite of the second one. In other words, what was subtracting a negative 4 now becomes adding the opposite and adding a positive 4. Well, now that goes back to my addition rules. And remember, my addition rules said when the signs are different, we take the smaller from the larger. So 4 from 9 is 5. How about that? And we take the sign of the larger. Well, 9 is larger. When we ignore the signs, 9 is larger, and we'll take its sign of negative. Aha! There it is. So let's see if that idea carries with the other two. The idea of add the opposite of the second one and go back to those addition rules. Well, let's take a look at this one. If we add the opposite of the second one, it was 5 minus a positive 12. Well, if we add the opposite, that would be plus a negative 12. Well, now we're going back to those addition rules, which say ignore the signs, take smaller from larger. So if I ignore the signs and just look at 5 and 12, 5 from 12 is 7. And if we take the sign of the larger digit, we're ignoring the signs, look at the digits. 12 is bigger. What's its sign? Negative. Oh, that's what we got. Huh. Interesting. Well, let's check it out one more time and see if this really is the rule. So if I do a negative 2 minus 7, and I say, well, let's switch that up, and let's do this idea of adding the opposite of the second. So I'm going to add the opposite. It was a positive 7. Now it's going to be a negative 7. So I'm going to take a negative 2 plus a negative 7. It's an addition problem. Let's go back to those addition rules. When the signs were the same, remember, we said, hey, we like it that it's the same. We're going to keep that sign. They're negative. It was negative. And we said, let's just go ahead and add the digits. 2 and 7 gave me 9. Well, I'll be daggone. That appears to be the rule. And that is the rule. So when you are subtracting signed numbers, the rule is that you add the opposite of the second, add opposite of the second, and once you do that, you go back to your addition rules. Go back to addition rules. See, that's one of the nice things about math. I know people get really frustrated with math and they feel like there's so many rules. But quite frankly, a lot of times you kick back to old rules. So what I did here was I just changed one piece. And I just said, you know what? I like my addition rules. I know my addition rules. I know those. So let's turn it into an addition problem then. Well, how do I turn it into an addition problem? By adding the opposite of the second one. And that will kick it back to the addition problem that I know those rules. So I really am not learning a new set of rules. I'm really taking old rules that I'm very good at and just adding one new piece so that I can go back to those old rules. And that is one of the nice things about math. So let's take a look now at some other examples, and let's make sure that we're very, very good at this. Because you know I like to give you lots of examples so that you feel very comfortable with this. So I've got a 6.5 minus a negative 3.5. And what we just discovered is in order to subtract your signed numbers, you're going to add the opposite of the second one. So it's going to become 6.5 plus, and the opposite of negative 3.5 is going to be a positive 3.5. Now I'm going to add those two up. The signs are the same. They're both positive. So when the signs are the same, I'm going to keep that sign. And it's going to be positive, but remember, I don't really have to show that. And now I'm going to add up the digits. And a 6.5 plus a 3.5 is going to be a 10.0. And there's my answer. Okay, now you saw previously when we were adding up our sign numbers that we looked at fractions. Same thing with subtracting sign numbers. You can do fractions as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the opposite of the second one. So I'm going to turn this into a negative 4/7 plus a positive 1/10, because I'm going to add the opposite of the second one. Add the opposite. So now it goes into, okay, how do I add fractions? Remember, fractions require a common denominator. The x for multiplication means I'm going to cancel on those diagonals whenever I multiply, but I'm not multiplying here. That's going to be a common denominator. So what is the smallest number that both a 7 and a 10 will go into? Yes, a 70. So I'm going to convert each of these into 70ths. And I'll multiply this 10 by a 7, meaning multiply the numerator by 7. Because remember, I don't want to change the value. I just want to change looks. And 7 over 7 is a 1. And whenever you multiply by 1, do you change value? No, not at all. You just change looks. So this is going to become a 7 over 10. And over here, I'm going to multiply by 10 here, meaning multiply by 10 on that numerator as well. Again, so that I change looks, but not value. And 4 times 10 is 40, remembering that this is a negative. Now, remember, when signs are different, I take smaller from larger. Since I have the common denominator, now I can look at those numerators. I'm going to ignore the signs. Don't even pay attention to the signs. Just look at digits. Well, 7 is smaller than 40, so 7 from 40 is 33. And I'm going to keep that denominator because I worked really hard to get it, so I'm going to keep it. And then I'm going to take the sign of the larger digit. So when I ignored the signs, 40 over 70 was bigger, so I'm going to take its sign because it overpowers. And so I'm going to take its sign of negative. Now, always simplify a fraction if you can, but 30 is only divisible by 3 and 11. Will 3 or 11 go into 70? No, it won't. So here is my answer. All right, let's take a look at this next fraction. Notice we already have common denominators. Yes, half of our work is done. But I do need to turn my subtraction problem into an addition problem. So I'm going to add the opposite of the second one. So I'm going to keep that first one as is. I'm going to turn it into an addition problem and change this to a positive. Now, since I already have those common denominators, I can work with those numerators. And notice what I have here is different signs. So I'm going to take smaller from larger, and they're both 4. So 4 from 4 is 0, and basically these are exactly the same fraction with opposite signs. Therefore, they're going to cancel each other out. So I can look at it as I'm going to come up with a 0 over 5, and whenever I have 0 in my numerator, my answer is 0. So I get just simply a 0 as my answer. Or I can look at it as these two cancel, giving me a 0. All right, last one. So notice that in this one, what happens here is I've got a whole bunch of numbers that I'm adding and subtracting. Actually, it's all subtraction. But I can only work with 2 at a time. And here in America, we read left to right. We do our math left to right. So I'm going to simply work the first 2 first. And remember, in order to turn it into an addition problem, because I know those rules, I don't really know subtraction rules, just addition rules. So I'm going to turn it into an addition problem by adding the opposite of the second one. So instead of negative 8 minus a negative 9, it'll be negative 8 plus 9. Now, with that addition problem, remember when the signs are different, ignore the signs, take smaller from larger. So 8 from 9 is 1, and I'm going to take the sign of the larger. Well, the sign of the 9 is positive. So now I'm going to combine that 1 with the negative 13. And so I'm going to take this 1 here and this negative 13 like this. And once again, I'm going to turn it into an addition problem by adding the opposite of the second one. So I have a 1 plus, it was a positive 13, now it's a negative 13. And yet again, different signs. So I'm going to take smaller from larger because I'm ignoring the signs right now. So smaller from larger, 1 from 13 is 12. And I'm going to take the sign of the larger. Well, when I ignore the signs, the 13 is bigger. So it overpowers. I will take its sign of negative, giving me a negative 12 for my answer. Now I'm going to combine that negative 12 with this minus a negative 7. Right there. And once again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it into an addition problem because I know how to work addition problems. So I'm going to add the opposite of the second one, and it becomes a negative 12 plus a positive 7. Yet again, with those different signs, I take smaller from larger. So I'm going to ignore the signs, and I'm going to say, okay, 7 from 12 is going to be 5. And I'm going to take the sign of the larger. Well, the larger, when I ignore the signs, is the 12, so it's going to overpower the 7, giving me a sign of negative. Now I'm going to take that negative 5 and I'm going to subtract the 6. And once again, I'm going to turn that into an addition problem. And so therefore, it'll be a negative 5 plus a negative 6. And the signs are the same. And when the signs are the same, I like that. That's good. So I'm going to keep that sign and I'm just going to combine the digits. And 5 and 6 will give me an 11. So my final answer is a negative 11. So I hope that this helps with subtracting those sign numbers. Remember, the big gist is that we know our addition rules. So if we know our addition rules, why would we mess that up? Let's keep those addition rules. And let's figure out how to turn our subtraction problems into addition problems. So the way that we turn our subtraction problems into addition problems is we simply add the opposite of the second one. When we do that, it kicks it back to addition, and we go back and we say, okay, signs are the same. We like it. Keep the signs, add the digits. If signs are different, then we ignore the signs, and we take the smaller from the larger, and we take the sign of the larger because it overpowers the other one. But again, to turn it into addition, add the opposite of the second. I hope that helps. Have a great day.